Okay, class, so this is it. This is your last week of, really, it's your last week of the school, of the class. So it's next week will be the final. So with that being said, let's just jump right into this. We have to cover 4 more topics, but it's only 3 chapters. Okay. Um, digestive system is probably one of the biggest chapters that there is because our diet is what predicts our health throughout our life. If you eat junk, you're going to feel like junk, and basically you're just going to be junk. So if you get right into it, first off, I want to say that our digestive tract, what we eat and everything, that's how we get all of our nutrients. That's how we survive. Now, some people say our body is a temple, yet the way we eat, the way we act, we treat our body like it's a carny funhouse. And it's amazing how we still take nutrients out of even this horrible food, and it's still able to keep us strong, and we can survive. It's not the best way to live. But while you're young, enjoy it. Because when you're young, you can definitely handle, going out, staying out all night till everything closes down, wind up at Tommy's, get yourself some chili cheese fries with some jalapenos on it, chase it down, I don't know, with the warm Mickeys from the trunk of your buddy's car, and you still wake up okay. I don't suggest making that a lifestyle. But when you're young, you're able to handle those kind of things. When you get older, all of a sudden you hit a point where if you just put too much hot sauce on something, you don't feel good the next day. So we'll start talking about how all this happens. So we have to understand the digestive system. Now, it's just a tract. It's a hole in the mouth and a hole in the butt. Things that go in the mouth, as they break down, they're going to get broken down to their most elemental parts. Okay? So fats get broken down to fatty acids. Carbohydrates get broken down into their simple sugars. Proteins get broken down into their amino acids. Once we break these things down to their smallest portions, we then absorb them through our digestive tract, through our small intestines and our large intestines, into our bloodstream, our lymphatic system, where then we can take all these pieces and put them back together to make the necessary components for life. So, the digestive tract, I believe, is like 32 feet long. So let's just jump into this. Now, on that tract, we're going to have accessory organs, which are going to be the ones that will add all of the enzymes to break the stuff down. Okay. So digestive tract, of course, we start off with, let me go into the drawing aspect. Okay, so we start off with the mouth. That's where food goes in. The pharynx, that's the back of the mouth where we swallow our food. The esophagus is where the pharynx stops, because this pharynx, when it stops, we're going to have our trachea in the front and our esophagus is behind it. Our esophagus drops into the stomach. From our stomach goes to the small intestines, goes through the large intestines, and then when it leaves there, it becomes the city's problem. Okay, so that is digestive tract. Now the accessory organs are going to be our teeth for chewing, our tongue for moving the food to the back of our mouth. Salivary glands, they start to actually put salivary enzymes in there to start breaking down carbohydrates. Pancreas, now in our pancreas we're going to be getting our pancreatic juices, pancreatic lipase for fat, lipids, fat, lipase, enzyme to break down fat. Pancreatic amylase. Amylase breaks down carbohydrates. Salivary amylase starts breaking it down in your mouth. Pancreatic amylase starts breaking it down. And in our pancreas, we are going to get trypsin. Trypsin is an enzyme that starts to break down proteins. Our liver, main thing for digestion for our liver is we are going to get bile. Bile makes it so we can absorb fat. Now, bile gets stored in our gallbladder. The liver, however, has some major other issues. Because remember, we absorb all these nutrients into our bloodstream through our portal system. Our portal veins are around our intestines. Now, our portal veins are going to port all those nutrients over to our liver, where now our liver is going to modify them and make them into necessary elements. Okay, so our liver doesn't just end with making with making bile. It has a major function is to process everything that we eat. I always suggest easiest way to study is just study these things right here. Kind of gives you the gist of everything. Alright, functions. This just kind of seems, we don't need to go through all this really. Okay, ingestion is just taking the stuff in. Mechanical processing is chewing in your stomach, churning it all around. Digestion is breaking everything down. Secretion is secreting the enzymes to finish breaking everything down. Absorption is absorbing all of it into our bloodstream, all the necessary, the goodness. Excretion is all the stuff that didn't get absorbed now is going to travel through our large intestine, where we're going to compact it because it goes through our large intestine as water. We compact it to make it, well, to make it look like what we're more familiar with, okay, to make it look like a turd. and defecation is getting it out of our system. Okay, you're probably tired of going into the histology of everything. Histology is just the cellular aspects, the tissues, the cells, and all that. Just understand that in our intestines, especially our small intestines, we have these folds in here. These folds, what they do is they increase the surface area. We want to have a lot of surface area to try to make sure the nutrients are going to hit some portion of this mucosa where we can absorb it. Okay, so that's going to be our mucus layer. Then underneath that, our submucosal. Okay, and then we're going to have our muscular layer, because our intestines are smooth muscles which actually contract and push food along in peristaltics. And then our serosa layer, remember, it has serous fluid, which is sterile fluid, because we have these tubes that are running along, and we don't want the tubes to stick to each other and get stuck. So we have that serosa layer, so it's going to be lubricated and slide around. So our intestines are slippery on the outside too. Okay, mucosal epithelium tissue, already talked about this stuff already. Remember, it's non-keratinized, stratified squamous. Okay, now as we go down, let me see, the small intestines, we talked about the circular folds. The lamina propria, that's the thing you need to understand about that, is that's where our blood vessels and our lymphatic vessels are. Our blood vessels are going to absorb nutrients into our bloodstream, and it goes to our liver, portal system. The lymphatic vessels are going to absorb fat. Fat goes in its main line through the lymphatic system right into our heart. Okay, let's see, circular fold. This right here is, I don't want to go into this. You're not going to need this. Okay, the neural plexus is not something I'm too worried about there. Okay, so sphincters, all I want you to understand about sphincters are they're just circular muscles. They open up and let things go through. They close up and don't let things go through. So we have our lower esophageal sphincter, which our esophagus dumps into our stomach. If that doesn't close up, well, stomach juices go back up into our esophagus. We get heartburn, our gastroesophageal reflux disease. Then the end of our stomach is going to be the pyloric region. So we have the pyloric sphincter. Okay, so that opens up and lets the stuff from our stomach into our small intestine. Our small intestine has something called the ileocecal valve. It's where our small intestine, where our appendix would be, right lower quadrant. That has the ileocecal valve. It's another sphincter muscle that closes up. It opens up and lets the stuff from the small intestines into the large intestines. That travels through our large intestines, and then we have our external anal sphincter and our internal anal sphincter. Internal we can't control. External we have control of. We'll talk about that stuff. Okay. And you remember these microvilli little things and all that stuff. Okay, advantageous just means wrapped around. So the serosa advantageous is wrapped around. This is what I want to talk about. So we have smooth muscles that are going to propel the food down along our digestive tract, the entire digestive tract. The movement of the food is called peristalsis. Segmentation is where we segment things out, we kind of cement mix, we just churn things up, like a butter churn. See, the best way to explain it is the muscles contract here and here in a rhythmic motion, and it propels whatever's inside that tube along in one direction. That's peristalsis. Segmentation is where we break it up into sections. And while it's in sections, we just kind of like knead it. It's like kneading dough. And what it does is it just sort of solidifies and hardens and breaks everything up into chunks. Okay. The peritoneal, I just want you to remember something, okay? Our peritoneal, okay, so our peritoneum is basically the folds. The best way to do this is I've got to jump ahead of everything. Okay, so when you get right down to it, let me see, our omentum is peritoneum. So our peritoneum is just the space within here. And then we have the mesenteries. So the mesenteries are part of like our visceral or parietal peritoneum. Peritoneum is what surrounds our intestinal cavity, okay? Our abdominal pelvic cavity. The mesentery is sort of the visceral peritoneum, if you want to put it like that. And you can see it's these folds that come out and they wrap around. It's like this is our large intestine. This is a small intestine. It has a fold that comes around. So these are our mesenteries that come around. They wrap and they hold these guys in place. Okay? That's all you need to understand about the mesenteries. The peritoneum is going to be basically, it is just this line. So it's this line that comes right down through here. So certain organs are going to be laying behind the peritoneum. So those are called retroperitoneal. Some of those are in the middle, in between, okay, intraperitoneal and secondarily retroperitoneal organs. This gets to be just like nomenclature, which is just going to be too much. Just understand, retroperitoneal is going to be your kidneys. Kidneys and stuff that goes with your kidneys. We'll talk about that later. Okay? So intra, of course, stomach, liver, ileum. Okay, retro, kidneys, ureter, abdominal aorta. All these things are behind that sheet, the peritoneum. Some things go in between both, okay? So those are going to be secondarily retroperitoneal. It's not going to make any difference. Okay? Now our mesenteries, the best way to understand the mesentery is going to just be going right into here. The mesenteries connect all of our organs in our abdominal pelvic region. They hold them in place. Okay, so here's our mesentery. Now, the only one I really care that you understand is your greater omentum. Okay, so your greater omentum is one right up here. So your greater omentum, it comes from your stomach and it goes around and droops down. It's kind of like a fold. Okay, it's like a sheet that comes down and wraps back up. Now, the reason I want to understand about the greater omentum is the greater omentum stores a lot of fat. So the quintessential beer belly, the fat gets stored in the greater omentum. So if you have that paunch that sticks right out there, that is your greater omentum, has too much fat in it. Okay, that's called mesenteric fat. Your lesser omentum goes between your liver up here and your stomach. So the greater one is the bigger one, kind of hangs down below. Simple enough. They get carried away when we start talking about the mouth and all that stuff. I don't want to go crazy on it. Hard palate, soft palate, we'll talk about all that stuff. So let's talk about the oral cavities. Now, first off, we have our tongue. The uvula, the little punching bag that hangs down back here, that hangs down off your soft palate. Now, if you take your tongue and you run it from your hard palate, from the front of your teeth, run it down, it kind of drops off. Then we're going to drops off, we're now in the soft palate. So right here is the hard palate. Okay, for the hard palate. When you feel your tongue drop off here, that's the soft palate. This flips up when you swallow. So it flips up into this area, and it prevents food from going from your oral pharynx through your nasal pharynx. But we've all seen somebody who laughs or something when they're trying to take a drink and they blow some fluid out of their nose. It's because the soft palate here didn't have enough time to close. All right. Now we're going to talk about some of the glands. So, let's see. Now the glands in your mouth, they serve a purpose. Let's talk about where they are first. So our palatine tonsils, so the palatine tonsils are right here, soft palate. Tonsils are loaded with white blood cells, first line of defense from pathogens. Okay. Now to jump back up here, first thing I want to do is point out that this individual looks like they need some serious dental work going on here, doesn't it? Teeth should not be that gray. Okay, don't worry about the frenulum and all that stuff. Frenulum is just where we're fused together from embryology. Okay, the tongue, all the tongue does is it manipulates your food. So it has our sensory on there, yes, our taste buds. But the main thing about the tongue is the tongue allows you to chew your food. It makes the shapes and everything so we can speak. But it helps to move the food to the back of your throat so you can swallow your food. Okay? Body, root, and dorsum. Wow, they really want you to know everything. Okay, the body is the meaty portion of the tongue. Really simple. The dorsum is the rough part of the tongue that you feel. Okay? The root of the tongue is where it's attached onto the mandible. Okay. Let's see. The frenulum is just a divider between your tongue. Okay. So here's the glands. This is what I want you to be aware of. So we start talking about the glands. They have a purpose. Okay. So first off, know your parotid gland is right back here. So that's your TMJ muscle. So here's your masseter muscle. Behind it is going to be your parotid gland. It has this duct that goes over the muscle and it empties into your mouth. Sublingual is underneath your tongue. Submandibular is underneath your mandible. Okay. Okay, if you understand the parasympathetic and all that stuff. Let me see. When do they tell you what the glands do? Okay. So salivary amylase, all the glands make salivary amylase, and amylase is the important thing. Starts to break down carbohydrates. That's the main thing I want you to be aware of. Okay, they start talking about your teeth. They're going to go through a lot of detail on here. Picture tells you everything. The root of the tooth is below your gum line. Okay, so the root of the tooth is where we have the bones that our teeth are anchored into. The neck is between the bone and your tooth. So the neck is actually just going to be nothing more than your gum. Okay? So that's your gingiva. The crown is the top of your tooth. So the white part of your teeth, when you get a crown, you put a crown on top of all this stuff. All right? Now let's just go into something that makes it a little interesting in Los Angeles especially. Understand that our teeth, they're going to be held into the bones through something called cementum. So cementum cements it into the bones. Okay? So our periodontal ligament holds everything in. That's why teeth are so hard to pull out. And as you can see, we have a nice blood supply to teeth. A lot of nerves in there too. Enamel is the white part. Enamel is the hardest substance known that our body can produce. Needs to be, it's our teeth. Now, enamel can be worn away. When enamel gets worn away, what we then get down to is our dentine. Our dentine, like dentine gum, our dentine is kind of yellowish. Here's where things get unique. This is something that happens in Los Angeles. Okay, so you have somebody who they don't feel their teeth are white enough. So what they do is they buy teeth whitening kits. They start bleaching them. The bleach is actually a lot of peroxide. Now let's say they put on a strip and they hold it in there for like, 6 hours. You shouldn't do more than, I think, 30 minutes. They take it off and their teeth are looking better. So next day they do it again for an hour. Then they do it again for an hour. And it says you need to give your teeth time to heal. You got to let this enamel heal. Enamel doesn't really replace, but it can repair some. All right? If you don't let it repair at all, you start to wear away the enamel. Now, I've actually seen people who've done this. These people that keep whitening their teeth, eventually start to wear away their enamel to the point where they start to see their dentine shining through. Dentine is yellow. So now they've whitened their teeth so much, they've worn away so much enamel, that now they have the yellow from the dentine showing. So now they think, whoa, my teeth are looking like butter sticks. Okay, so now they got butter teeth going on, so they understand, well, I need to get some stronger teeth whiteners. So they start whitening them even more until they wear away so much of this enamel that their teeth are really yellow. Now they need to go to a dentist, and the dentist can't do anything now except fit them with some veneers, which is about, I don't know, anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000 for a full set. That's just so you understand teeth. Now, the one thing about teeth, you don't need to know all this. You're not going to be a dentist, but our teeth are kind of gnarly, especially these molars. Now, when you're born, and you're going to have 20 deciduous teeth. Deciduous means baby teeth, which means the tooth fairy is going to come see you 20 times throughout your life. Now, after you start losing those, eventually you're going to have 32 permanent teeth. You lose one of these 32, tooth fairy don't come to you anymore. You go to the dentist and spend a lot of money. So get the tooth fairy money and put it into an account with investments in case you get older. Anything about teeth? Mastication. Mastication is chewing. What that is mechanically breaking things down. And then we're going to move everything back to our pharynx. So as we move it back to our pharynx, it's going to get to the back of our oral pharynx, and it's going to stimulate the uvula, flip up our soft palate. We're going to swallow the food. So when we swallow the food, it's pretty simple. So we have the soft palate right here. Now the food's going to go down. Here's the epiglottis. Here's the trachea. So as the food comes down, it hits the epiglottis. Okay, and you can see the epiglottis folds down, and now we go into our esophagus. Our esophagus now is behind the trachea. So as our food's going down the esophagus, peristalsis is this rhythmic movement which brings us all the way down. Here is where our diaphragm is sitting, and here is our lower esophageal sphincter, and then we splash down into the stomach. Okay. Don't worry about all this stuff. Let's see, so now we're in the stomach. Watch this to show this. Our esophagus is this really narrow thing that lays flat. Then when we swallow our food, it opens up and allows the food to go through down. Of course, we have the stratified squamous epithelial tissue because you're going to eat some broccoli or some raw vegetables or something that's going to scratch this up. So we have to have cells in here that are easy to repair. Yeah, I know. Don't sit there and say Twinkies don't hurt. It is soft food. Well, yeah, they'll kill you anyway. Now, once our food hits our stomach is divided into the cardiac region, which is where the sphincter is. The fundus is when you go out to dinner, you have a fun time, you eat a lot of food, the fundus sticks up. The body is the biggest part. Pyloric is where it empties out to. Lesser curvature is a small curve. Greater curvature is a bigger curve. And the omentum is going to be the fold that comes down from the stomach. Let's take a look at the stomach. Okay, cardiac. The reason I talk about the cardiac is because if the stomach contents goes up here in the esophagus, it feels like heartburn. Okay, so the cardiac is going to be at the lower esophageal sphincter. The fundus, because part of having fun is overdoing it with food. So that part raises up here above the cardiac. So when your stomach is filled, we go all the way up into that area. The lesser curvature is this portion right here. Greater curvature is this portion behind here. So this all right here is going to be the body. Easy enough. Okay, now the pyloric region is over here, and here's the pyloric sphincter. There we go. Okay, gastric folds are just referred to as rugae. So your stomach has all these folds in there to allow it to expand. Your stomach is about the size of your fist, but when you go to Vegas and you hit that buffet, do you just eat a fistful of shrimp? No, you eat as much shrimp as you can. Okay, so you're going to fill that thing up. So basically, you want to have something that can expand. And we're going to have these muscles. Okay, so cardio muscles, all that stuff, the body muscles. I want you to understand is longitudinal, circular, oblique. All these muscles are designed so the stomach can churn like a cement mixer, mix everything up, and then we're going to spit it out right there into the small intestine. First part is called the duodenum. Okay, here's those omentums. So your lesser omentum, or this is mesentery, greater omentum, down in here. Okay. When it comes to arteries and stuff, just know gastric means stomach, splenic means spleen, hepatic means liver. Okay. You're not going to have to remember all this stuff. Okay, gastric pits. I don't care so much about that, but I want you to understand is we make a lot of mucus cells. So we have a lot of mucus cells because we produce pH. So we produce acid, okay? So we're controlling the pH. Stomach acid is incredibly corrosive. It will eat away proteins. Stomach acid is designed to break down a steak. Okay? So we have to have a lot of thick mucus to protect the lining, the cells of the stomach, from the stomach acid. The acid is made from our parietal cells. So our parietal cells, the P means for pH. It controls the acidity, the pH. The chief cells are going to make pepsinogen. You get a peptic ulcer. So peptic is like stomach. So chief cells are in your stomach, and they make pepsinogen, which breaks down all of our proteins and stuff. Now, our enteric nervous system, endocrine, which means these are endocrine cells inside of our enteric nervous system. They're going to secrete hormones that actually stimulate things to start to happen in our digestive tract, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So I talked about this already. Parietal cells, okay, they're going to make hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is a chloride and a hydrogen. They get pumped out from different areas of the cell. They come together to make hydrochloric acid. A proton pump inhibitor, your Nexiums and all that, what they do is they prevent that hydrogen ion from being pumped out, so we don't make hydrochloric acid, so we lower stomach acid. Now, we also make something called intrinsic factor. We need intrinsic factor so we can absorb vitamin B12. We need B12 in order to make red blood cells. If you don't make intrinsic factor, we have pernicious anemia, which is a pathological condition. Okay, now hydrochloric acid, that's what makes it so our stomach kills most bacteria, most pathogens. But then it starts to break down proteins. Denature means breakdown. Okay, so let me see. I talked about pepsin coming from our chief cells. Okay. So don't worry about this stuff, that's just on newborns. So here's our enteroendocrine cells, okay, our G cells. It's nice because they make gastrin. Gastrin stimulates the parietal cells to actually start making what? Hydrochloric acid. Okay, it's just that simple. Microscopic. More microscopic. Okay, you see the vagus nerve. Okay, if you know this stuff, don't worry about it. Alright, so food comes from the stomach and it stretches, causing the chief cells to say, hey, so not the chief cells, but the G cells to release gastrin. Gastrin then causes the parietal and chief cells to start to do what? The parietal cells are going to make the pH, the chief cells are going to make pepsinogen, so now we start to chemically digest the food, break it down. Now, once it enters into the small intestines, okay, so now it enters into the small intestine, first part is going to be the duodenum. When food goes into the small intestines are going to release secretin and cholecystokinases. So what that does is it tells the gastrin, which is coming from what? The G cells, stop doing that, we got it under control now. What it's doing is telling the G cells to turn off those pumps, alright? Now we're in the duodenum, so now what we want to do is we want to get stuff from the pancreas and the liver. The duodenum is the first part of the small intestine, and it gets digestive juices from the pancreas and the liver after it gets the food from the stomach. When food leaves the stomach, it's referred to as chyme, C-H-Y-M-E. Okay, small intestines. We go duodenum, jejunum, then to the ileum. Okay, that's the pattern. This is the first part is duodenum, second part is jejunum, last part is the ileum. Okay, once again, just study this picture. You'll be fine. You see, one thing I will tell you is you can never really tell where the jejunum starts and where it stops. So all you can do is go with, we see where the stomach empties out, that's the duodenum. If you see the large intestine, you know that's the cecum. The jejunum is somewhere in between those guys. So blood supply, I'm not going to kill you with blood supply. The circular folds. What I want you to be aware of right here is in our small intestines, we have all this microvilli, okay? So you remember this epithelial tissue. And what this microvilli does is it increases the surface area. But in each one of these little things that sticks up, I want you to take a look at it. We're going to have a capillary system. So that capillary system is going to make it so we're going to absorb nutrients from our food, okay? Everything gets absorbed. All of our proteins, all of our carbohydrates or sugars, all of our vitamins, our minerals, all of those things that we need for life gets absorbed through these guys, these microvilli. Everything goes into the bloodstream, to the portal veins, right to the liver, except for fat. Because this green part right here, this is going to be referred to as our lacteals. Okay, this is part of our lymphatic system. So fat gets absorbed into our lymphatic system and then travels up into the subclavian vein and it gets emptied into the heart. From the heart it travels throughout the body. So our fat takes a different pathway. Let's see, the only thing that I really understand when we start talking about the intestinal glands, okay, Paneth cells are used for immunity. Once I get into the Peyer's patch. Okay, here's the lacteals, the green part, which I already talked about, the green right here. That gets fat. Okay, duodenal. I want you to go too crazy on duodenal. What I want you to be aware of is, so here's the duodenum. Here is our gallbladder. Our gallbladder stores bile. Here is some of our hepatic ducts. So left hepatic duct, so it's your left side of the liver. This is the right side of the liver. Hepatic ducts are, a duct just means it's a tube. So this tube right here takes bile. And as you can see, it comes down through here. Remember right here, this is the lesser momentum. It comes down and then it goes underneath the stomach and then it pierces into the head of the pancreas. So it comes to the head of the pancreas. Now we get the pancreatic duct that comes together right here. Then they empty into the duodenum through the sphincter of Oddi. Where these guys come together, that's referred to as the ampulla of Vater. Coolest name in the body, I think. Okay, now our gallbladder is referred to as a cyst. because a cyst just means a fluid-filled pouch. Okay, you get a blister, a water blister from wearing shoes, new shoes. That's a cyst. Okay, so the common hepatic duct, or the common bile duct, is where we actually have all these guys come together. Okay, so that's just your bile duct. Okay, let me see right here. Yeah, I think we covered this one. Okay, now we're going to the small intestines, and the Peyer's patch are things I want you to be aware of the most. So your Peyer's patch, little areas right here, and what they do is they secrete a lot of, it's referred to as immunoglobulin I, IgA. We make almost like 2 cups of that stuff a day. That helps to prevent any bacteria, any viruses, any pathogens we don't want in there. So it is our first immunoglobulin, which is an antibody. All right, so intestinal juices. Let's see. Secretion of intestinal juices. I haven't talked about the intestinal juices yet. Let's go into the large intestine. Okay, I need you to understand this part. Our pancreas, it's not in here, so let me just put it like this. All right. So our pancreas is going to, pancreatic amylase breaks down carbohydrates. Pancreatic lipase breaks down fat. Now we get pepsin from the stomach. Our pancreas makes trypsin. Okay, so trypsin and pepsin do the same thing. They break down meat, proteins. Okay. So, same guy, same picture. Okay, a large intestine. The main thing our large intestine does is it reabsorbs water. Okay, so when our food leaves our stomach, it's referred to as chyme. As it's traveling through our small intestines and everything, it's still incredibly liquidy. Now, when it empties from our ileocecal valve into our large intestine, we're not going to start to absorb that water. But we're also going to absorb some of the vitamins that were made by our bacteria in our intestines. One of the main ones is vitamin K. We need that for blood clotting. They're big on blood supply here, aren't they? Okay. So, this right here is where our ileum comes in. This is our ileocecal valve. So now we have all this juicy stuff, which we've seen if you ever had diarrhea. It gets splashed down into here. Here's our little appendix. That shouldn't be, we don't know what it's for really. But if we get some digestive stuff in here, some fecal matter, it gets impacted and it grows. We have appendicitis. Now, as this watery liquid is pushed up your large intestine, this is the ascending, gets up here to underneath the liver. This is the hepatic flexure where it turns. Now let's go into our transverse. So our transverse comes across, gets towards our spleen, and now it's our splenic flexure where it turns. The whole time it's doing this, we're absorbing water. Okay? So up here it's still really liquid. Now it starts to get a little bit muddier. Now it gets to be thicker and thicker muddy. Now it starts to get a little more fudgy. And now it starts to become a little bit more dense. Alright? So this is our descendant. We get down here and we go to our sigmoid, goes back to the middle, and then we go into our rectum. This is more of what we're used to seeing. A little more graphic than I need to be. Okay, I just covered the colon. Okay, I just did the flexures, hepatic and splenic. Okay. Now, haustras are just the spaces right in here. The haustras are in between these rings. So the haustra is this area right here. That's the area that gets the stretch receptors that tells the muscles to contract, to push everything along. Okay. It's pretty good right there. I'm happy with all this. Okay, now we go to our rectum. This fills up with fecal matter. And what we have here is we have our internal anal sphincter, which we don't control. So this one starts to relax. We start to feel things push in here. Our external is the one out here. This one where you clamp down on this one in class where you're trying to hold onto a fart, and you kind of walk along, you let those relax, and sort of kind of drift it out. So this is part of our rectum. Okay, and here you can see the haustra is really nice in between the circles with the. Okay, so liver. The main thing about the liver is it is going to make our bile. here is some of the metabolic functions of our liver. We know about 2,500 that it does. Here's just a few of them. Now, liver gets divided up into right lobe, left lobe, caudate lobe, quadrate lobe, anterior, posterior surface. So don't get carried away here, okay? Just know this. Falciform ligament. So here is your falciform ligament. Okay, anterior is going to be the scrub to the front, posterior to the back. Right? Left lobe is going to go over to the left, right lobe is going to go to the right. Keep it like that. Alright? Round ligament actually just connects the liver over onto the stomach. Gallbladder, little green thing, sits underneath. Gallbladder stores bile that was made in the liver. Okay. Hepatic just means liver. So we got a lot of blood supply to our liver. Okay. Now this is just showing you how our liver is organized with all these cells and everything in here. These green things, what I want you to understand, this is where our bile goes. These are our bile ducts. So you can see how much bile ducts we have in here. Okay, don't worry about the Kupffer cells. Interlobular bile ducts. Okay, bile canaliculi, bile duct in between the lobes. Okay, gallbladder. I think we took care of that already. Fundus body next. Sounds like the stomach, but it's actually the gallbladder on this one. Okay, let me see. So here's what I want you to understand. One thing that happens is, let's see, when food enters the small intestine, okay, it signals, okay? So what happens now is cholecystokinin is released, which now causes the gallbladder to contract and push out bile. Okay, that's all you need to understand. Cholecystokinase causes stimulation of release of bile from our gallbladder. And it comes down here, help yourself. It's easy enough with the gallbladder. So the pancreas, I want you to be aware of what the pancreas is. A good picture of the pancreas. I'll get a good picture of the pancreas? Okay. So here's the pancreas. It kind of hides behind the stomach. And it's a gland. It's a pretty big one. And the pancreas makes pancreatic juices. Okay? So take a look at this stuff. Memorize this chart. It's the best thing for you to do. I want you to be aware of what the pancreas is. The pancreatic duct runs through here. If we get a gallstone, which blocks up here, then we get pancreatitis where it swells up. Pancreas is divided up into two sections. So we have over here an endocrine where it is going to make, this is like your islet of Langerhans, where it makes insulin. Okay? These are your acini cells. This is where we make our pancreatic juices for digestion. These are the cells when you binge drink that get hurt. So binge drinking leads to pancreatitis. Okay, here's our pancreatic enzymes. So lipase, okay, carbohydrates, okay, it does what it is. And proteolytic enzymes. So let's see. Insulin, glucagon, and somatostatin. So insulin, we know, insulin takes glucose from the blood into the cells. Glucagon is going to stimulate your liver to actually produce more glycogen. Somatostatin is kind of the one that tells, let's see, somatostatin kind of says, hey, we're eating, we're satisfied. Yeah, I think we're probably good with this. It was a lot, I know that.